Welcome again to another CheapWineFinder.com podcast. This is Champion Dave. Another podcast for a wine review we wrote up on the CheapWineFinder.com website. And today we have a $11.99 wine from Aldi. It's called the Durante Toscana Rosso 2020. And Toscana Rosso is a wine from Tuscany, the Chianti region. That isn't DOC or DOCG. That's the ruling body. The Italian government has ruling bodies for all the wines who make the rules and regulations for everything. And there's a story here, which I'll tell in a minute. And this is not a DOC or DOCG. G stands for guaranteed, the highest quality you can get from Italy. And it's IGP. And actually, they created the IGP Toscana Rosso just for this category of wine. In the 60s and 70s, Chianti was huge in the United States. People who didn't know anything about wine knew about Chianti, and which is one of the problems. I don't know if you ever see pictures of hippie crash pads. There's usually a Chianti with a with a straw wrapped around it, and someone made a candle out of the bottle. It was cheap Chianti, and nothing like pouring a lot of cheap wine into a country where to kill a fad. Because Chianti was always really good, and actually it's currently the number one imported wine from Italy in the United States. So Chianti was good then and was good now, but some people brought wine in that wasn't so good, and it kind of got a bad reputation and died off, or slowed down anyway. And a lot of the wine producers were the DOC, DOCG, is very big on tradition and huge on quality and didn't want any changes made. So a lot of the bigger producers felt like they were stuck. They wanted to break out. The wines weren't selling like they used to, and they were experimenting with French varietal grapes, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, and they decided to blend it together and see what they had. And what they had was a great wine. They're called Super Tuscans, which is what a Toscana Rosso is. And they sold them, but since they couldn't sell them as a DOC or a DOCG wine, it went into table wine classification. Now, in the United States, everything from Screaming Eagle to Boone's Farm is a table wine. They don't do that. They don't have the classifications. Italy, the classifications mean something, and a table wine is not usually a good wine. It's usually a lower quality wine, and these were actually from some of the finest Chianti vineyards and some of the finest Chianti winemakers, and they sold like crazy, which was not good because now the table wine was outselling the DOC and DOCG wines. So they created this Toscana Rosso and IGP, which was in the middle, because they didn't follow the rules, but they're okay with it now. And that's what this is. Those wines are $40 to $60 a lot of times, even back then. And this is $11, $12.99 Aldi wine. Now, Aldi is huge for value-priced wine in Europe. You got to remember that Trader Joe's is Aldi Nord, Aldi's Aldi Sud or South, and that's the place to go for value wine. They're just huge. I'm going to take a sip of this stuff. So don't sleep on imported wine from either Trader Joe's or Aldi, because they have contacts everywhere. Plus, they sell a ton of wine. They sell wine in Europe. They sell wine in Australia. They sell wine in the United States. They can move a lot of wine, and if a winery can get a wine into Trader Joe's or Aldi's, that just pretty much makes the profit for the year. So these are pretty good wines, and this is not a great Super Tuscan wine. It's a good Super Tuscan wine. It's interesting. It's kind of complex. It's got good length to it. So I'm gonna take another sip. It's a little bit jammy, which is interesting. It's not a not a sweet wine, but it's a dry wine, but there is a little bit of jamminess to the flavors, which isn't a bad thing. Then there's some rougher edges, some rougher spices, and some licorice and some tannins, but smooth tannins. I mean, it doesn't have tannin bite, so it's not a bad wine. If you ever had a Super Tuscan, a real one, you know exactly why it's a big deal. And this isn't that, but it's a good $12 red blend from Tuscany. I mean, $11.99. It's a pretty decent wine. It's got good flavor. It would go with a meal. I mean, whatever you can do red wines with it in Italy, this will do the trick. If you're not a big red wine drinker, that little bit of sweetness might be something pleasant for you too. So there you go. It's a Super Tuscan. And now you know the story of Super Tuscans. You know the story of Aldi and why they have good imported wine. And now you got me telling you about it with my voice just coming off having a cold. Having a cold's like the worst thing you can have because you get no sympathy. Like everybody gets them. It's like, they don't care. So that's it for me, Champion Dave. Like us where you like your podcast, push buttons if you will. And we'll have more wines coming up. Stay safe and warm. And keep it cheap. We'll have a bunch more wines in February. It's cold and there's not much more to do than to pull the cork on a nice wine and have a couple sips. So adios. Bye-bye.